Imagine in your hands, you're holding an artifact. In detail can show you the design of a weapon that could literally destroy the planet you live on before you can even finish, let alone start your lunch. What you have is very, very important, and you cannot let anyone you don't trust have access to it. In fact, right now at this moment, you're being chased and you're going through a high-speed adrenaline moment. In fact, you are being chased right now and your hands are shaking as you hold this artifact because you don't know what is going to happen if you get caught. You just know you would rather risk the safety of your life than let anyone else have these plans. But you didn't make these plans for this weapon. You stole them because you need them to protect your planet. The people that own this weapon, they're after you and they are hunting you down. Suddenly, your vehicle comes to a complete stop. The force throws you down and your heart just sinks to the bottom of your stomach and you cannot go no matter how fast or how much you throttle your ship. You look out the window and you realize you're being pulled into the famous Imperial Star Destroyer, a spaceship that is a mile long and holds over 37,000 crew members and passengers in addition to the 60 turbo lasers. Your high-speed chase isn't on a highway, but in a hyperspace lane, and you're about to uncover the biggest vulnerability that could save the entire universe and all of its different species. Hi, and welcome, Cyber Defenders. My name is Reanna Schultz, and I'll be your aide today as I guide you through different learning opportunities within CyberSpeak Labs. Now, to help keep our lab growing and being able to provide educational content to you all, please make sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment on the podcast episode. Your views and interactions with the show aids financial support towards providing education materials for you all. Now, without further ado, you all voted on it, you asked for it, even one of my Discord admins requested it. We are going to go over cybersecurity flaws in Star Wars. Now, this is to also celebrate May the 4th be with you, but hey, let's just have some education material as we also watch a million hours of Star Wars within this week. So I won't keep you all waiting for this one. Let's go ahead and enter the lab to collaborate and to learn. Okay, so Star Wars. Where to begin on this? Now, if you're a person who hasn't watched Star Wars yet, no worries. It's May the 4th, so you have literally an entire non-official holiday to watch literally any Star Wars episode, TV feature, or I'm sure you can go to your local supermarket and buy whatever Star Wars Lego set that there is. Now, if you haven't seen Star Wars, I'm not judging. This is a judgment-free podcast. But some of my viewers, I can't speak for them. They probably 1000% will judge you, especially if you might be a Star Trek fan. That's okay. So Star Wars is a huge, huge, huge universe. Even with Disney owning the rights to it, humongous. In fact, there are 11 live action movies, 1 animated movie, 13 TV series, which also include both live action and animated. In 2024, it was estimated that Star Wars had roughly made over $12 billion US dollars. And this also includes streaming, books, merchandise, comics, anything else I could have missed that is all Star Wars, Disney-ness, whatever. So in other words, Star Wars is a very, very successful franchise. And again, I do apologize if anyone is a Star Trek fan. I'm not hating, but there is only so much time we have in the lab for one space-themed episode this month. So with that being said, since there are so many Star Wars episodes and movies to choose from, we will be sticking with the cult classic Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, which fun fact, if you aren't an edgelord with Star Wars, this movie was originally released in 1977 as Star Wars, but it was renamed in 1981 as Episode 4, A New Hope, when the next movie was released. So yes, if you did not know, Star Wars movies in the 70s all the way up until Disney franchise did get a hold of it. Yes, they did not release with Episode 1. They started with Episode 4. And in my opinion, it is one of the most amazing movies out of the entire series. Out of the entire original series. I will just correct myself that because I can already see the comment now. Well, technically, blah, blah, get out of here. Go make your own podcast about Star Wars. So, anyways, as a quick disclaimer, if you have not watched Episode 4, well, shocker, there will be spoilers. So, I'm going to mostly go into high level of the major scenes and plot points and kind of talk about the cyber risk throughout this entire movie. And additionally, all of the show notes, all of my findings and cyber risk will be available on the CyberSpeak Labs website. I will link this show notes down below. And of course, I always enjoy your feedback on this. I encourage you guys to comment if I had missed anything or if you want to add to anything that comes in your mind as I'm going through this podcast episode. Please share it. I always like to hear what other people might have, especially when it comes to cybersecurity risk or cyber period. So yeah, please make sure you're interactive with this. I enjoy reading the comments. It makes my day. You guys are awesome. So without further ado, let's begin. And I will say one of my favorite and iconic parts of Star Wars is the first 30 seconds. And it's the yellow text scrolling through the screen, giving context or background to the film you're about to watch. Now, because I know there are some hardcore fans that are like, well, you should have technically started with Rogue One instead of Episode 4. Calm down. We have plenty of opportunities to dive into other Star Wars episodes because, in case you didn't know, May the 4th comes once a year. And so maybe next year we might go over Rogue One, especially if we're talking about the Death Star. So anyways, I'm doing Episode 4, so deal with it. My podcast, my rules. Now, I'm going to start with Princess Leia. She's on a super, super tiny ship called the Tantive 4, which if I completely butchered the name of that ship, I am sorry. Yeah, you can just get over it and enjoy the rest of the podcast. Now, this isn't a warship that she has. It wasn't designed to go into battle. It doesn't have all of these explosive weapons on it. It's mostly used for travel or for political events. So basically, this would be treated like a limo for a president or a dictator, but basically more designed to be a space sedan for said political parties. It's a little cruiser, we just see Princess Leia going above and beyond in her little cruiser, waving to the crowd. So regardless, at this point in time, Princess Leia and her crew have the Empire's plans for the well-crafted Death Star, which is basically a giant ship weapon that can destroy planets in minutes. And the Empire at this point in the Star Wars series has been getting I would say a very not so positive reputation for planetary takeover using said weapon. So, in other words, the Empire had physical blueprints on a external media drive. And this is one of the most chaotic weapons that's just on a data disk. So, where in this universe, there's technology. We are literally traveling at the speed of light. We have spaceships and everything else. And the fact that they put this giant mass weapon on a data disk where, I don't know, maybe they could protect it somewhat better. Like, there are literal lasers in this movie, but Princess Leia was like, yeah, bet. Basically did a physical pen test, walked in, stole these plans that are on a data disk and just made a quick getaway in her spaceship sedan. So I'm sure, especially for those who have watched Rogue One, it is a little more complicated than how I made this. But either way, she just walked in, grabbed these, and was like, hey, peace out, Girl Scout, and then went into her space sedan. So this is the equivalent if an entire company put all of their employees' information on a USB and just didn't lock it away. It's like if you walked into the CEO's office and there's a USB stick that says confidential HR plans and payment information, whatever. So we'll just call this beginning scene. We're not even 30 minutes into this movie, but we'll just call this failure point number 1. And again, if you guys are wanting to keep track of all the failure points I've discovered while watching this movie for you, they will be on the show notes. And of course, if you have any opinions of the failure points that I pointed out, please comment them. I want to hear it. I want to hear it, like I said earlier. So anyways, now Leia's spaceship isn't known to be the fastest. Like I said, it's literally a diplomatic cruiser. Not gonna lie, I would have highly, highly enjoyed watching a bunch of limos race each other on an F1 or NASCAR track, but you get the gist. Her getaway was not the speediest, which means eventually the Empire did catch up to her and use their tractor beam to pull the rebels, which is what they call themselves because they're rebelling against the Empire, into the Star Destroyer. And if you're like, what the heck is a tractor beam? Think of it as a giant fishing rods for spaceships. And if you're crossing paths into a tractor beam, spaceships will come to a complete halt, no matter the speed, and could just be pulled into the gravitational pull of the beam. It's super helpful if your spaceship breaks down or, in other very, I would say, design situations. But in this specific scenario, extremely inconvenient for the rebels. So once the rebel ship is in the Star Destroyer, there's a whole scene of explosions and lasers and pew 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 pews and people dropping. And between the Empire stormtroopers, which is basically the Empire's frontline military, so between the Empire stormtroopers and the rebels, obviously the rebels are outnumbered and they're just dropping like flies because they have this entire army against, just basically a spaceship crew and Princess Leia and a couple of robots. So whatever. This is one of science fiction's most iconic moment also during the scene because as all the pew pews are happening, the smoke is lifting up on the ground, people are flying across the screen. I made that more dramatic than what it is. It is the 1970s. Darth Vader emerges from the smoke with his heavy breathing, the cape flowing through, I guess, the space wind. I don't know how his cape is flowing. But, however, this intense scene also paints a picture of the type of character Leia is. Leia is a forward thinker, meaning she is one to think ahead and use the not so uncommon common sense. Especially in high stakes scenarios like this, Leia goes for her droids. There's C-3PO, which is a human robot, and then there's also R2-D2, which is the fan favorite, cute little droid who has small cylindrical body, stubby legs, a domed head. And when speaking, R2-D2 makes these cutest little whistles and beeps, which makes him a very comedic character throughout the Star Wars series because it's going to be this huge intense moment and then you just hear R2-D2 going beep, 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 beep. And then, of course, that's like robot sass. As all of this is happening, as Darth Vader enters the scene and, of course, the stormtroopers are getting more and more intense and capturing people, Leia inserts the Death Star data disk into R2-D2 moments before caught by the Empire. And during the scenes of chaos, Leia somehow gets knocked out during this chaos and gets captured by the Empire. But then during all of this, R2-D2 and C-3PO leave this chaos literally by sneaking off into an escape pod where they're going to be launched toward Tatooine, which this scene leads us to cyber failure point number 2. R2-D2 is a literal walking computer that apparently will accept any type of external memory disk, especially if R2-D2 is with the rebels the entire time. The Empire could have easily corrupt or steal the memory of R2-D2 during this intense moment if R2-D2 was caught. Like, Leia literally just put a data disk into R2-D2 and just let him be. And she didn't put a password in. She didn't do any physical verification, no physical pin. Nope, the droid just took the memory and was like, okay, cool, and then went on with this day. So literally R2-D2 has the data of one of the most intense weapons of Star Wars. So keep in mind with what data is uploaded to R2D2, because once the two droids make it to Tatooine, they are walking through a giant desert. This planet gives off main villain character energy. Like the people that inhabit this planet, there are Tusken Raiders. This planet also houses a lot of bounty hunters, scrappers, criminals, and there are some, I would say nice people on this planet. There's a lot of farmers and, of course, like the amazing people like Obi-Wan Kenobi and Luke Skywalker live there. But yeah, it's a very, I would say, dirty, dusty planet. Almost as if the outer barriers of Las Vegas was a planet. That is probably a good description, mixed with a lot of villainous and just no rules whatsoever. So yeah, anyways, they make their escape to this planet. And once they are there, the two droids bicker basically like an old married couple. And C3PO, R2D2, they're like, fine, whatever. And they decide to split. And what they believe is their own path of the direction they are going. And eventually the droids are picked up by Jawas, which are basically sand crawlers. And I do apologize again if I'm not pronouncing these names right. But these sand crawlers are scrap metal collectors that pick up wandering droids and other machines and put them in what their spaceship is literally called a sand crawler. That's why they're called sand crawlers. So they are eventually sold for what is considered a fair price by these scrap metal collectors. So imagine R2D2 is walking around this sandy desert, dusty planet with mass destruction plans, and he has no passkey, no pin, like literally no protection on his hardware, and he just gets picked up by random people, sold to a random person on this planet. And since there's no protection on R2D2's data, I state this as cyber flaw number 3. So R2D2 and C3PO are literally sold to a person that goes by the name of Uncle Owen. Uncle Owen is a super, super nice guy. He has a wife, and of course, he also lives with one of the main characters of the entire Star Wars universe, which is Luke Skywalker. And when bringing the droids back to the homestead, Luke Skywalker decides to clean the droids. And during the cleaning session, Luke had accidentally played a holograph that Leia had left on R2D2 before they decided to go through the escape pods. Iconic message is played, "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope." Which is honestly a pretty weird cryptic message for a person to find when cleaning a droid when it was picked up for scrap metal, but whatever. Are we surprised that Luke could access a random message by a renowned political figure during that time? No, because again, finding number 3, R2D2 has no literal protection. I guess finding 2 and finding 3. Because apparently we can have a universe where we can travel by light and have lasers, but physical security does not exist. So when Luke confronts R2D2 about the message and asks, "Hey, who was that?" R2D2 and all of his sassiness was like, "Nope, no idea. Beep, beep, beep. No idea what you're talking about," and just completely gaslights Luke. And Luke's like, whatever. So honestly, I love R2D2 in this movie because I think he forgets that he's not supposed to be the main character, but he definitely gives off main character vibes. And I say this because this is the 3rd time in this movie where R2D2 goes off and tries to have his own side quest through the movie. The first time, he was trying to escape through the pod, and C3PO did not like that idea. And then the second time was in the desert when him and C3PO got into an argument. And now this is the 3rd time where R2D2 goes back into the desert because he's trying to find Obi-Wan Kenobi. Honestly, if there was any form of mobile device management policy in Star Wars, clearly R2D2 doesn't know how to follow it because he has no concept of geofencing or notifying his owners where he's going. He is the reason why air tags are a thing, and the find my location settings and a lot of electronics. So, which honestly, for a droid with, I would say, such stubborn persistence or personality, it's a robot, so I don't know. You would think there would be some form of tracking on an asset with such high visibility, especially for a droid that works very closely with political officials such as Leia. And so this is gonna what I'm gonna call slam finding number 4. Because again, there is no audits out here. It is literally the wild, wild west of space. These walking memory sticks are, and apparently there's no rules or laws and regulation of who owns them. And basically, in the Star Wars universe, it's like, oh, there isn't a creature with you. So now you're my property. You're my robot. Hi, I'm going to do whatever. It'd be no different in like today world in our universe where we would go to an Apple store and just start picking up phones and laptops and being like, yeah, this is mine now. Nobody was walking with it. So I guess this is mine now. Okay, bye. Have a great day and just walk out. So anyways, we have another Rogue 2D2 off on his own main quest to find Obi-Wan Kenobi. Luke and C-3PO notice the droid to be missing, and so they go search for him on a space cruiser called the Land Speeder. They eventually track Rogue 2D2, but get ambushed by Tusken Raiders. R2D2 and C-3PO manage to escape, but the Tusken Raiders knock Luke unconscious. With Luke not being able to defend himself, the Raiders, well, they raid the Land Speeder until a very mysterious hooded figure appears and scares off the Raiders. Luke eventually gains consciousness and thanks the man who he refers to as Ben Kenobi. Luke then mentions to Ben about how R2D2 is looking for his old owner named Obi-Wan Kenobi, which Luke's uncle had mentioned to no longer be alive when asking about Obi-Wan Kenobi. But Luke is looking at who he knows as Ben Kenobi and goes, hey, are you related to an Obi-Wan? Do you know an Obi-Wan Kenobi? And Ben's like, yes, because I am Obi-Wan Kenobi. And of course, Luke is like, what? So anyways, this is where Ben discloses to Luke that he is Obi-Wan Kenobi. This eventually leads to everyone going to Obi-Wan Kenobi's hut, where he gives Luke his father's lightsaber. Then proceeds to disclose pretty much every single confidential information about the Jedi history, the Order 66, and how to use the Force. And this is where I'm calling out security flaw number 5. Because apparently not only can we have walking memory sticks with no protection, but now zero trust is clearly not a thing in this universe. So imagine a guy who is basically been your neighbor for as long as you can remember. He's a trusted elder in the community. He saves you from someone trying to bust into your car or house and then proceeds to give you a confession about how he's in a secret society, how he knows who your real parents are, and then proceeds to tell you all so said secrets of this secret society, which, yeah, zero trust, in my opinion, crosses the line of so many Jedi NDAs. And, oh well, Obi-Wan gives as many cares as Rogue 2D2 over there. So, yeah, trust no one, nothing. I mean, there's a reason why we have NDAs in real life, but okay, I guess Luke has now been fostered all of the Jedi secrets. So, here, at this point, Obi-Wan not only discloses all of this Jedi information, but now he invites Luke to be part of the mission to save Leia. Luke basically was like, yeah, I appreciate the offer, but I'm gonna go hit the dusty trail and go live my simple life back on the farm with my aunt and uncle. He leaves and does just that. However, and I remember watching this scene when I was younger and was absolutely traumatized by it. And instead of the simple life that Luke remembered and knew, he returned to Well, for content censoring here, we'll say he returned to a giant barbecue and there was nothing left of so said barbecue. So the farm is in a crisp. And this is because the Empire decided to pay a visit and not also follow any boundaries and laws with fire safety. So, yeah. And of course, like Luke, who knows nothing about his parents, who grew up with his aunt and uncle, allegedly at this point in the movie, he just breaks down with an emotional trigger because this was his family. This is the life he knew. This is the life he allegedly wanted to go back to. And so without much choice, because he has nothing left to go back to, he decides to join Obi-Wan's mission of saving Princess Leia. And the next few scenes become, again, a lot of iconic pop culture references in the Star Wars universe. There is Obi-Wan using Jedi mind tricks on stormtroopers. There's the scene where they visit the cantina where Luke gets into a fight with an alien, and then Obi-Wan just, I would say, casually defuses the situation. And by casually, I mean the guy that was in the fight left with one arm less. So, of course, there's also meeting Chewie and Han Solo about the passage to Alderaan. Then there's this whole scene of Han's with bounty hunters and blah, 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 whatever. Again, high level point of the movies. And the one takeaway that I got when I was rewatching some of these scenes was that Disney really softened Hans in the newer movie shows. Hans was one heck of a dude in the original series. After a few pew-pews and a cool action moments, like Hans was awesome. And now it just feels like Hans like, yeah, let's talk about her feelings. And, who knows? Maybe it's part of the maturity aspect that the writers gave to Hans in the newer seasons. But either way, after a few pew-pews, cool action moments, and chilling at the cantina, the crew had rushed aboard the famous Millennium Falcon to head to Alderaan, which they will soon realize and discover to be destroyed by the Death Star. And I have no aviation security background, but I recommend watching the episode Defenders in Lab Coats with Lillian Baker if you do want to learn more about aviation security. And yes, I'll put in the description. But I feel like there is a huge violation of no flight plans being tracked or recorded by the Millennium Falcon. And also the fact that there's no real time updates of an entire planet existing. Like in this universe, I have a feeling laws just don't exist. Like legit laws don't exist. It's just whatever alleged morals and ethics at this time. People are flying spaceships wherever they want in the universe. Spaceships are going missing. Nobody knows why. Like, there's no tracking system. And then for a planet to, like, completely not even exist anymore, and they just showed up and they're like, we can't park our cruiser here. Okay, that's weird. Again, it could be me, but I feel as if that falls again under the zero trust and lack of inventory findings. Again, how can a spaceship plan an entire trip to a planet and then it just doesn't exist? It's like if someone walked into a data center, destroyed a server without no one knowing it's offline until they physically went into the data center themselves and was like, yeah, that server's gone. That was our firewall. Okay, and then just continue on with the day. So I'm going to say we'll call this findings number 6 and number 7. I've already lost count, so I'm pretty sure it's number 6 and number 7 for the lack of flight plans resulting to safety issues with space traffic control. And then also number 6 with no real-time infrastructure visibility and monitoring. So yeah, there's a lot to unpack here, but anyway, so moving on with the review in the movie, just like earlier in the movie, a tractor beam pulls the Millennium Falcon towards the the Death Star, which at this point is no secret of what the Empire can do with the Death Star. The crew, because they know the potential outcomes of what's going to happen, which is not good, the crew hides under the floorboards of the ship, and they wait until the stormtroopers become neutralized with the ship and leave because they're not seeing anyone in the ship. It's just apparently a empty ship floating in space to them. They're like, oh, okay, we'll just keep this ship that we captured on deck, and then just whatever, we'll go on with our day. So to explore the Death Star and in hopes to find and rescue Princess Leia, Han and Luke dress up as a stormtrooper and pretend to have Chewie as their prisoner. Honestly, this is one of the oldest tricks in a pen tester's playbook to get access to an organization. It's like faking a company badge and pretending it doesn't scan, or you just walk in and, if you have troubles opening a door or whatever, and you try to see how far you can go pretending to have access without having access. So boom, slap it. Security finding number 7 or 8, whatever it is at this point. We're calling this social engineering and going undetected. Also, lucky for the crew, R2-D2 has the layout of the Death Star already uploaded into a system because, again, nobody in this universe believes in encrypted drives. So Hans and Obi-Wan split responsibilities to plan their escape. Hans bluffs his way into the detention area while Luke locates Leia's cell to break her free. Obi-Wan leaves the group to find a way to disable the tractor beam, and the group discovers Leia, and their plan goes a little sideways. They accidentally fall into a trash compactor that's about to be squished, just until at the last moment R2 and 3PO save them by hacking into the compactor. Which, let's just go ahead and make this another finding, and we'll call this unpatched open door to a device. So we'll just, whatever. As the crew escapes the trash compactor and dealing with some stormtroopers, Obi-Wan reaches the tractor beam and disables it. Now, Darth Vader discovers Obi-Wan. And let me just say, they have this epic lightsaber duel. But as the crew fights off the stormtroopers, gets aboard on their ship, Obi-Wan looks at Luke and sacrifices himself by getting slashed by Darth Vader's lightsaber. But the crew escapes, just without Obi on board. So as they fly into space, Leia mentions that the escape was way too easy and they fear that they're being tracked, which is not wrong because the Empire slipped a beaconing device on the Falcon, which I'm just going to call this another finding. The Falcon has no protection against any advanced persistent threat, also known as an APT. There's no detection system to prevent intruders from breaking into the ship or, beaconing back to a command and control center, which apparently they can do this for a ship, but a Rogue 2-D2 going off in the middle of a desert to find someone, they have no idea where he is. So you can track random things, but apparently you can't track, expensive droids out in the desert, so whatever. Regardless, the Falcon crew flew back to the not-so-hidden Rebel base at this point, since, they're being tracked, and they hook R2-D2 up to the Rebel network to retrieve the Death Star plans. Which, boom, slapping, another finding here. I don't know how many cyber awareness videos I watch where they tell you to, hey, if you find this random USB in the parking lot, you shouldn't plug this into your computer. R2-D2 was literally just in the Empire's network to, hack a trash compactor. So is he clean right now? Probably not. He was literally in the Empire's network. So anyways, we're just slapping a finding on this, calling this another bad security practice. So once the rebels scanned the prints of the Death Star, they were able to find an entry point to destroy this weapon. Then right after they came up with the plan, how to execute it, Han Solo basically said, yeah, cool story, bro. I'm out of here. Which, honestly, nobody stopped him. Nobody questioned him. So, to me, this is a red flag, maybe a finding. We'll consider this a finding, because why not? There's no insider threat program. Hans is a great guy until Disney. But still, we're talking about a secret operative plan. And then someone goes, yeah, I have a conflict going on around that time. Thanks for the information. Oh, by the way, the Imperial ship is cool. So, yeah, toodles. See ya. So, we're just calling this another finding. No insider threat program here. So, anyways, the rebels go into battle to destroy the Death Star. The catch is, someone has to destroy the thermal exhaust port, which, fine. I know you all have been waiting for this exact finding. Boom, slap. Another finding, single point of failure for the entire infrastructure that isn't even protected in a different way compared to the rest of the Death Star, allegedly. So at this point, it's an epic space fighter scene. A lot of pew pews. Luke's wingman gets hit. They can't protect him. Now, all of a sudden, Darth Vader and his team is closing in on Luke, and then boom, Han Solo appears. He blasts all of the Darth Vader escorts, sending Vader into space like a Beyblade, and says, "You're all clear, kid." Using the Force, Luke exploited the weak part of the Death Star, and it blows up. At the end of the movie, Leia gives medals to Luke and Han, not Chewie, which we can all be upset about. Now, you might think, oh, no more findings. Wrong. Slap. One more finding. There was no hot wash or lessons learned. Literally, people are like, yeah, cool, bad incident. Here are some medals. Let's go to the cantina, and not think about, well, what if this happens again? So totally not foreshadowing to any future movies whatsoever. But yeah, overall, it was a really cool movie to watch. Like, I really enjoyed the Star Wars Episode 4 movie, and I hope you guys were at least gonna celebrate May the 4th, go watch a Star Wars TV series, episode, movie, I don't know. But I hope you also might be thinking about potential cybersecurity incidents. So, defenders and lab coats. As we are closing in on May the 4th special, I do apologize, this take a little bit longer to drop, but hopefully it was worth the wait. Again, I do want to hear what you all thought about this episode. If you can think of any other potential cyber findings. If you are curious, all my findings, again, are located in the show notes, located on cyberspeaklabs.com, in the description as well. And additionally, for fun, I did request ChatGPT to create an entire pen test finding report for this movie, and with what findings that ChatGPT thought as well. Let me know if you guys had any other additional findings, any other comments as well. And good luck reading that awesome report. Yeah, just some of them are pretty bad in my opinion for the findings that ChatGPT gave it. Again, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share the podcast. I do look forward to seeing you all again in the lab soon. May the 4th be with you. Bye!